But there's also people that are fucking perverts, and they have a thing called autogynephilia. All they have to do is identify, air quotes. When you just have to identify, that's it. Do you know who's killed more people than ICE this year? Trans shooters. Do you know the majority of these high school shootings have been transgender people?
One of those claims is a contested theory being passed off as a diagnosis. One of them is contradicted by the state of California's own documents. And one of them is wrong by, depending on which database you choose to use, somewhere between 44 to 99.9 percentage points. And he said all three of them in under 5 minutes with total confidence to 11 million people. What baffles me is not that Joe Rogan gets things wrong. People get things wrong. That happens. What baffles me is the ratio. I'm talking, this is like maximum certainty, minimal curiosity about one of the smallest minority groups in America. So today, we're going to do what no one in that room did, and we're going to check. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Andriana, and here I like to overthink pop culture in hopes of actually making the mess mean something. Today in the chair, we have the Void. Cutie Belcalis is in the chair today. So if you enjoy thoughtful spiraling with the occasional cat supervision, feel free to subscribe and stick around. So context first, because I actually watched this thing, which apparently puts me ahead of most people with opinions about it. Steve-O is the guest. Steve-O from Jackass. Steve-O is telling Joe about a stunt that he wants to do. He was planning to get temporary breast implants, so a Jackass style bit. He was going to film some pranks and then get them removed. When will these men grow up? It's beyond me. Because when I was a kid, this man was doing childish shit. And now here I sit, a woman in my 30s, and they're still doing insane childish shit. It's crazy. So the surgery falls through the night before because the anesthesiologist backs out. The next day, Steve-O is buying groceries and the cashier, in his words, quote, seems pretty evidently transgender. Okay. So he takes this as a sign from the universe that he should ask a suspected trans person whether his stunt would land badly in the current climate. Now, do I have feelings about clocking a stranger at a restaurant and appointing them to be like your personal ethics consultant while they're in the middle of a freaking shift? I do. Of course, I have a lot of strong opinions about that. Ma'am, this is a piggly wiggly. He stated that his intent was not mockery. He's asking, could this hurt people? Which, in light of everything, I feel like that is more reflection than this conversation is going to see again moving forward. So, because then the cashier shares something real. They're not allowed to use the bathroom at their own job. And Steve-O says it broke his heart. That's what he said.
They described to me a level of oppression that genuinely fucking broke my heart.
And Joe, who was not there and does not know this person, nor does he know this employer, nor this state, nor this policy, he interrupts to inform everyone that it's not true. So notice what just happened. A trans person's firsthand account of their lived experience in their workplace got overruled while they're not even there by a man working with zero information. Joe doesn't know if there's a single stall option. He doesn't know if the bathroom they're allowed to use means the bathroom they can enter safely without conflict and harassment or danger. He's just decided the story has to be wrong because to him the story doesn't fit. And that confident little correction is the doorway. Oh my gosh, it's like a whole door. There's a floodgate opens up of misinformation. I chose 6 out of over a dozen claims. So let's do 6 checks. And just for the record, we could have checked all 12.
But there's also people that are fucking perverts, and they have a thing called autogynephilia. And what that is they get a turn on by pretending to be a woman. They get excited by it, and they want to be around women, and they're creeps. And so you give them a fucking Willy Wonka golden ticket to go into the women's locker room and the women's bathroom and stare at women and pretend you're a woman when you're just a crazy man.
So he's talking about autogynephilia like it is a settled diagnosis. It's not. With her, sometimes I can't tell if I'm looking at the front or the back of her when her eyes are closed. That's the back of her, but there was a second I thought it was the front. Anyways, autogynephilia is a real term. It comes from sexologist Ray Blanchard's typology, and it refers to arousal at the image of oneself as a female. But here's what it isn't. It isn't its own diagnostic in the DSM-5 TR. It isn't its own diagnostic in the ICD-11. There is no condition called autogynephilia disorder that doctors are out here handing out to trans women. The theory itself has been highly criticized in peer-reviewed work. Julia Serrano and Charles Moser, among others, have picked apart its methodology, its weak controls, and its habit of stretching sexual hypothesis into like a total explanation of a trans identity. So my point is, it is contested actively in the literature. And the American Psychiatric Association, the people who write the actual manual, they are explicit about the surrounding concepts too. Most atypical sexual interests are not mental disorders. Cross-dressing, for example, by itself is not a psychiatric disorder. Quick little vocab word for the video, paraphilias. So paraphilias are intense, according to Google's AI overview. Paraphilias are intense, persistent sexual interests, urges, or fantasies involving atypical objects, situations, or non-consenting individuals. And even this says they are not classified as paraphilic disorders only if they cause significant personal distress, impaired daily functioning, or harm the individual or others. So these interests only become diagnosable disorders when there is clinically significant distress, impairment, or there's harm being done to the person or to other people. Those are the APA's standards, not mine and not the Google AI's. Watch the move that Joe makes because it's the move that this whole genre of panic depends on. He takes 4 completely different categories: trans women, people who experience this arousal pattern, individuals diagnosed with a actual genuine transvestic disorder, and sexual predators. And he melts all 4 of them into one villain, one guy, the creep in the locker room. Those categories are not interchangeable. You fucking asshole. The APA literally separates them, and there is no official count of people diagnosed with autogynephilia in this country because, say it with me, it is not tracked as a standalone diagnosis. For scale, the Williams Institute estimates around 698,500 trans women among roughly 2.1 million trans adults in the US. So we're talking 2 million trans people. Less than half of that, significantly less than half of that, trans women. That's the entire population that we're discussing. A fraction of 1% of the country. It's pathetic. Claim 2, the bathroom threat.
And I'm not saying all trans people are creeps,
Right.
but a lot of these fucking people that are in trouble for going into women's bathrooms dressed as a woman with a fucking beard and a heart on are just that. They're creeps.
Okay.
They're crazy men.
Out of everything in this rant, this one here is the easiest one to check because researchers have already checked it repeatedly on purpose. Again, the Williams Institute at UCLA, they reviewed the evidence on locker room, restroom, and changing facilities, and their conclusion is one sentence long. There is no evidence that letting trans people use facilities matching their gender identity jeopardizes anyone's safety or privacy. There is no evidence. But that's not the only one. The best known study compared Massachusetts localities with and without gender identity non discrimination protections. They tracked recorded assaults, sex crimes, and voyeurisms in restrooms and in locker rooms. And the result, those incidents were rare everywhere, and there was no significant change after the protections passed. A national analysis using crime victimization data found the same thing. No increase in stranger perpetuated violence after states or counties adopted these protections for trans individuals. I actually think this next part should piss you off because it pisses me off. The research did, in fact, find a safety problem in public restrooms. It just isn't the one that Joe is bitching about. In the 2015 US Transgender Survey, 9% of respondents said that they had been denied access to a restroom in the past year, and 12% reported being verbally harassed, physically attacked, or sexually assaulted in one. The more recent 2022 survey still shows the same pattern. The documented victims of the bathroom conflict are overwhelmingly trans people themselves. That's who's being harmed in bathrooms. And the harm only gets worse, not better, when trans people are forced to use a restroom matching their birth sex. See, like that could be her face right now. Right? Like, do you see? Wait, where am I? Like, you see, like, that's the nose, and then it got like eyes. That could totally be her face. So when Joe describes inclusive bathrooms as a like hall pass scenario for predators, he's describing like a scenario that the data has gone looking for multiple times and not been able to find, while also completely ignoring the harm that the data actually kept finding everywhere it looked. Irresponsible. Also, predators were already illegal in bathrooms. They are still illegal in bathrooms. No non-discrimination laws are repealing assault. So, okay, claim number 3, the 47. You're my diamonds, you're my platinum, my diamonds, my All right, the 47. This number is real, which makes it really useful in this sort of an argument, which is why it's worth slowing down on. The number comes from the California Department of Corrections' own reporting of SB 132. It's the law that lets transgender, non binary, and intersex imprisoned people request housing that matches their gender identity. And here's the full picture from the March 2026 report. 1,028 people requested transfer since the law took effect in 2021. I'm going to put this on the screen so that you can really see these numbers. 1,028 people requested transfer since the law took effect 5 years ago. 47 were approved. 132 were denied. 226 were still pending, and 140 changed their minds during committee review. 12 who did transfer were later moved back. So 47 is the output of a 5-year review process that says no almost 3 times as often as it says yes. And his add-on that some of them are sex offenders appears nowhere in any documentation I can find, and nowhere in any documentation he's citing, because he's not citing anything. So the CDCR's report does not break down the 47 by offense type. He seems to have just attached that detail himself, in my opinion. Claim number 4. All they have to do is identify.
All they have to do is identify, air quotes. When you just have to identify, that's it. No operation, no nothing, identify. That is bonkers.
This is the cleanest debunk of the episode, I think, because the policy he's describing is public. You can read it. I read it. I mean, it took a small chunk of my afternoon and a beverage. That's it. Here's what California's actual process looks like. So, a request for gender identity-based housing goes to a multidisciplinary classification committee chaired by a warden, a custody staff, a medical staff, a mental health staff, and a PREA compliance manager at the table. Already, like, you know, they review the person's full file, criminal history, arrest records, sentencing documents, medical and mental health needs, custody level, time left to serve, safety concerns, security needs. Makes sense. The committee can deny the request on management or security grounds, and the CDCR says outright that placement is not automatic. Self-identification opens the door to the review process. It does not decide the results of the review. We just saw the proof in the statistics. 132 denials. If all they have to do is identify were true, that number would be 0. And when it comes to the federal picture, that makes his framing even stranger. So while he's over here describing this weird fantasy where anyone can just say the magic words and walk right in to a women's facility, the actual live court fight is about the opposite scenario. What inspired me to prioritize this video is Trump's Executive Order 14168. It tried to impose a blanket rule forcing trans women into men's prison. No individualized review at all. I tried to get this done during Pride Month. So last month, June 2026, a federal judge blocked that policy for 14 trans women in federal custody, finding that they had shown serious risk of violence, sexual assault, or self-harm if they had been transferred. The judge's point was blunt. The government doesn't get to knowingly create a predictable danger and offer to treat the injuries afterwards. Happy fucking Pride Month. So the real question in American courts right now is not should predators get a golden ticket. It's can the government ignore documented danger to trans women because the culture war math finds them inconvenient. So Joe, he has this entire argument completely upside down. Claim number 5. Gender dysphoria, always a mental illness. This one pisses me off all the time. This is a pet peeve of mine.
What you're dealing with is a form of gender dysphoria, which has always been classified as a mental illness
Yeah.
until people became much more empathetic and sensitive to people that have this problem.
Right.
Always is a bold and confident choice in that sentence. So let's do a little history lesson, shall we? So the first 2 editions of the DSM didn't mention gender identity at all. The first diagnosis in this area did not appear until 1980. So always already turns out to be around the time Joe is probably in like kindergarten. No, I'm kidding. Probably middle school. And the changes since then are not the field going soft. This is my thing. This is called progress. So they get more precise. In 2013, the APA replaced gender identity disorder with gender dysphoria, specifically to relocate the diagnosis away from who a person is and onto the classified significant distress that some trans people experience. The APA says plainly that gender nonconformity is not in itself a mental disorder. They also say something that most loud people in this debate have never even read, and that's that not all transgender people experience gender dysphoria. The World Health Organization went further and moved gender incongruence out of the mental disorders chapter entirely, stating that classifying trans identities as mental illness causes stigma and it doesn't reflect the current knowledge. So Joe's version fails on literally every single axis. It was changed because the old categories were clinically wrong, the same way that the field eventually corrected itself about left-handedness and about homosexuality. Claim 6, the school shooters.
Do you know who's killed more people than ICE this year? Trans shooters. Do you know the majority of these high school shootings have been transgender people?
The majority. He said the majority, so let's see how that's going. Reuters checked this in 2024. Transgender suspects were about 2% of mass school shootings and 0.1% of all US mass shootings in the prior decade. Factcheck.org ran it through gun violence archive data. 5 shootings out of 5,748 since 2013 involved trans or non-binary perpetrators, less than 0.1%. The Violence Prevention Project's stricter database of gun violence, it goes back to like 1966. So 201 shooters, 196 cisgendered men, 4 cisgendered women, 1 transgender person, 1. And when the Heritage Foundation tried to push a 50% version of this claim, Wire audited it against K through 12's school shooting database and found that 3 out of every 48. So you can pick any, you choose. You pick whatever reputable database you want, any definition. The claim isn't off by a little regardless. It is off by either dozens of percentage points or several orders of magnitude, depending on how generous you feel. And I am not feeling very generous right now. So, the ICE comparison. He never defines what the hell he's counting. Reuters reported at least 17 deaths in ICE custody by early April of this year, and the number was climbing. The worst part is when Steve-O actually asks a follow-up.
I did not know that.
Yeah. How many of them? There was one recently, and yeah, it's a lot of them.
The majority of school shootings, evidence presented, 1 recently. Got it. Steve-O didn't know that because it's not true. I'll zoom back out because the saddest character arc in this whole segment belongs to Steve-O. He came in with a story about a real person whose pain moved him.
That's how you get men in women's prisons.
Yeah. All right. You've convinced me.
Doesn't mean
Convinced? Literally by what? By what? We just spent all this time fact checking. He's leaving convinced by, again, a contested theory, a debunked bathroom panic, a misread state statistic, a policy he seems to have never looked up, a fake psychiatric history, and a majority claim supported by one example. I don't know. If we had library cards, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. I don't know. Because Joe Rogan is not just your idiot uncle who's just wrong at Sunday dinner and you just have to get through it to appease your mom. Here's where I land. I don't actually need everyone to hold a graduate seminar on gender before they're allowed to have thoughts. People are allowed to be uninformed. Lord knows I'm uninformed about lots of things, I'm sure. I'm not sure what they are, but I'm sure. Ooh, ask me about crypto. So, the problem isn't ignorance. Ignorance is curable. And curiosity is free. Isn't that amazing? A real person told Steve-O about their life. And within 5 minutes, that person has been overwritten as a pervert and a predator and a shooter. When you take these data points that are contested, or you just remove all the context from them and you make these grand, sweeping claims about just a tiny minority of people, you aren't informing anyone. You're just manufacturing panic and prejudice. And with so little homework done and fact checking, it's just cruel. It's cruel. Thank you for overthinking podcast grade certainty with me today. If this resonated with you, if you're the type of person that enjoys this type of thinking, then you would probably like it here. So don't forget to hit subscribe before you leave, as this is a new channel and that is a huge help. Otherwise, I might get lost in the algorithm and you may never see me again, and that would be tragic. If you've been feeling bogged down or tired, or like you're just carrying too much and you're missing that spark that you used to have, I created a fun quiz. It's called the Spark Diagnostic. It's free, it's down below, and it'll help you identify the areas of your life where you might be over functioning and help you come up with some ideas to get that spark back. So if you're interested in that, that is down below. Now, why don't you unclench your jaw, mute one confidently wrong man, or just have a nap? Whatever you choose, you deserve it.